Hello everyone. My name is Francesca. I'm an employer relations assistant here at Stony Brook University's Career Center, and I'm here with Jeff Waterman from the United States Space Force. Jeff.
Hello. Yeah, like Francesca said, I'm Jeff Waterman. I work in talent management for the Space Force. So talent management, we do everything from recruitment to development, retention efforts, which fall under diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts as well. So excited to be able to come in and talk a little bit about the Space Force and our opportunities and what we're doing in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So Jeff, what types of roles will you be recruiting for and who are they open to?
Yeah, so with the Space Force, our mission is to acquire and develop and then ultimately defend space capabilities for the nation. So a lot of people think the Space Force is like sending people into space or stuff like that. And that's not what we do at all, right? We manage GPS for the entire country. So some people think like AT&T and Verizon, like the phone companies manage GPS, and that's not true at all. That's what the military does. We do that. Meteorological satellites, so like weather satellites, infrared, just basically a bunch of different space capabilities with the goal of providing support to warfighters on the ground from space. And then ultimately the whole nation benefits from these kinds of capabilities as well, because you wake up in the morning and you check your phone. Well, all those capabilities are space capabilities, and that's ultimately what we acquire and defend. What kind of roles do we have? We have ton of different roles across a bunch of different career fields. So we have roles in contracting, which are like the legal experts of the Space Force. So they help to analyze proposals. So basically how it works is the government will have a need, we'll put it out to the defense community, who will come to us with a bunch of different proposals for how they're going to address that need. And then our people who work in contracting, they're the ones that analyze those proposals and execute them, right? There's a lot of legality that goes into that, awarding multi-million-dollar contracts from the government to industry. So that's what our people in contracting do. There's no degree requirement for that. We have some entry-level roles. Basically, think of it as like a business or negotiations, communications, like all those kinds of skills. Those soft skills are really important for those kinds of roles. And like I said, there's no major requirement. We have roles in cybersecurity as well. Offensive and defensive cyber capabilities are a big part of what we do in the Space Force, right? Defending our capabilities from some of the enemies, foreign and domestic. So I'll just leave it at that. But cybersecurity roles as well. So whether that be computer science or the coding majors, roles for those. Engineering, so mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering, all fall into our systems engineering roles. So like I mentioned before, we work really closely with the defense community, Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, to help them design and develop space technology for the entire world. So that's what the engineers would be doing in that field. Financial management, there's a lot that goes into the budget and cost world of executing these kinds of contracts, and then obviously trying to save money where we can. And that's where our financial managers come in. You do have to be like a finance or a stats or a mathematics major to work with us in finance. Entry level roles there too. Logistics, so they're like the logistics advisors during the life cycle of our systems. So basically, when we acquire something, it goes through some different phases of development, production, and then enterprise, so sustaining that system. And that's kind of what our logisticians do, is more of the sustainment side of it. Manpower, so that's like myself, right? Either human resources or talent management people, with opportunities there. And then also program management. So our program managers are like the business side of it, right? Think of them as like the liaisons between us and then the defense community, the people that we're doing the contracts with. So they deal with schedule and cost, trying to make sure the projects that we're acquiring come in on time and under budget. So we have all those different career fields that I just mentioned. You can intern with us between your junior and senior year. 6 to 8 week long internships. We're in Los Angeles, we're in Colorado Springs, and we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So those are like the three places that you can be. They're paid internships. So we don't expect you to just come out there and figure out your housing and stuff like that. We do pay you to go out there for the 2 months. So those are the internships. And then our entry level roles, they're developmental roles. So it's a 3-year program that you would go through, whether that's in engineering or financial management or program management, some of those career fields I mentioned. You would apply for the entry level developmental role. How it works is we start you at a GS7 and then you move all the way up to a GS12. And the GS is just a pay scale within the government and like a ranking system. So a GS12 in Los Angeles, you make over 6 figures. So it's really a good way to get your foot in the door, entry level as a GS7, and then in 3 years, you build your career up. So very competitive program, but we're taking applicants. But yeah, so that's kind of how you can get involved with Space Force civilian service if you want. There's no commitment to the military or anything like that. We're like any other civilian workforce. So on base, usually it's about 60% are civilians, 40% are military. So we're pretty heavy on the civilian side in the Space Force just because of how technical we are.
Yeah, that's great. That sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for students in all different industries, all different majors.
Yeah.
Um, so what does diversity and inclusion look like at the US Space Force?
So diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Space Force, we have a strategy for that and how we execute that. And what it really comes down to is engagement, outreach, and enablement. So we make sure all of our employees are engaged, not just when they come on board, but before that as well. So we try to engage with a wider base of applicants, basically. So traditionally in the government, there is like one way to get people to apply. You post on USA Jobs and you hope that the right person applies. And in the Space Force, we've only been around for 2 years. So we try to make sure we, get our fingers into a bunch of different candidate pools to try and make sure we have the widest range of applicants that we can choose from. So that's part of engagement on the candidate side, and then engagement on the side once they come on board as well. We have a 10-step strategy for that. Basically, it comes down to growth, happiness, ambassadorship, relationship to your peers. So how comfortable you feel at work, relationship to your manager. So making sure that you're empowered to do your job to the best of your abilities and having access to that and the knowledge that's required so everybody knows what they need to do to get promoted. That's kind of the relationship with your manager. Recognition, we make sure that you're recognized for good work, whether that's through an award or a cash bonus or anything like that. We offer that kind of stuff. Feedback in the Space Force, we have a 360-degree feedback program. So traditionally in the government, you would get rated by just your supervisor, and that's not how we do it in the Space Force at all. You get inputs from your coworkers into your annual appraisal, and then also if you're a supervisor, the people that you do supervise, they get to have an input into your annual appraisal as well. So it just helps to make sure that we get a good 360-degree view of everybody working in the Space Force so that we promote the right people, right? And that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that we get supervisors who should be supervisors and then don't promote people that are just, part of the old boys club or whatever like that. Wellness at work as well is extremely important to us in the Space Force. We recently just hired a mental health psychologist. So everybody has access to that now too. Mental health is a huge problem in America. So we're just trying to do what we can to address that. So that's kind of how wellness plays into it. So family, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, we try to empower all our employees in that field as well. Alignment is our next step. That's the 9th step of the engagement strategy within our diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sorry, this is kind of a long strategy here, but just making sure everybody's aligned to our goals in the Space Force. That's important for when we onboard. And then job fit and compensation is the last step. So obviously you're not going to be engaged if you're not paid well and if you're not if you don't like the job that you're doing. So that was engagement. And then the next step is outreach. So we do a bunch of outreach efforts within the local Los Angeles community down here. There's a lot of schools that are underfunded. So we go in there, we bring some guardians. So guardians is a word for Space Force personnel, whether that be civilian or military. So we go into the local K through 12 schools, get them excited about STEM, do like a little demonstration where they can build a rocket with the ultimate goal of just getting them to work in STEM, whether that be for the Space Force or whether that be in industry or whether that be for a federally funded research company. We don't really care as long as we get them excited about working in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field. There's been a lot of research that's been done that shows that people either decide that they want to be in STEM or don't want to be in STEM from a very early age. So we want to make sure that we get as many kids committed to that as possible. And so that's one of our outreach things that we do within the community, just empowering some of those underfunded schools with the heavy Latino and African American populations. So that's one of the outreach things we do. And then the last step is enablement. So just making sure all of our guardians, all of our employees are properly enabled at work. So there's 4 steps that go into our enablement strategy: utility, productivity, engagement, and experience. So utility is like the bare bones, just making sure everybody has a desk, a phone, a chair, a computer, wherever they're working. We're heavy remote workforce. So we make sure that everybody has what they need at home. If you can't afford those things, then we have some programs to get you what you need. Productivity, so just creating repeatable processes for all of our employees so that they know what they're supposed to be doing to be successful and get promoted. Engagement, with our employees, so having a clear mission, annual surveys so that people can give their inputs about how they feel that their boss is doing for them, or how they feel that their job in general is, just to be able to give their inputs and be properly enabled at work, with the ultimate goal of creating an experience for our workers. So that's kind of how we do enablement, right? But yeah, that's pretty much the strategy for us in our diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, and that all sounds amazing, especially that program where you do outreach with schools. I completely agree. It's good to start young, and doing outreach to schools K through 12 is so important. And I see a lot more companies doing that as well, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Um, so why have you chosen Stony Brook as a place to address your diversity recruitment?
So when we engage with colleges, there's really three things that we look for, right? It's making sure that the universities have diverse communities, making sure they have a plan to execute their own diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and then making sure that they support other organizations outside of theirs as well with their goals. And Stony Brook kind of checked all those boxes for us. So that's the main reason that we were looking to engage.
Yeah, well, so you will be at the Diversity Fair this Friday, fall 2021, and we are very excited. We know you have a surplus of roles for our students. So thank you so much for your time, and we're excited to see you there.
Yeah, thanks, Francesca. We're excited to engage with some of the students, let them know about our opportunities. So looking forward to being there.
Yeah.